Captain Thelvin had served the Galactic Union for 200 cycles. He had seen dying stars and newborn planets. He had mapped nebulas that stretched across light years. But nothing in his long career prepared him for what his sensors detected that day. The signal was primitive. Electromagnetic waves, repeating in simple mathematical patterns. Any spacefaring species abandoned such technology thousands of cycles ago. Yet there it was, pulsing through the void like a heartbeat. "Captain," said his navigation officer, her crystalline body flickering with concern, "the signal originates from the outer reach. Sector 774. Uncharted space." Thelvin studied the star map. A small yellow star with 8 planets orbiting it. Nothing special. Nothing worth exploring? The Union had ignored this region for good reason. "Run a scan on the 3rd and 4th planets," he ordered. The results made his crew gasp. The 3rd planet was barren rock, covered in rust-colored dust. But the 4th planet was something else entirely. The computer classified it immediately. Class 12 Deathworld. Thelvin felt his crystalline heart crack with fear. In all the galaxy, Deathworlds were the most dangerous places. Planets where gravity crushed bones, where atmospheres burned lungs, where life itself was a constant war against nature. No sane species evolved on such worlds. No sane species could survive them. But the signal came from that system. Someone was calling for help. "We have a duty," Thelvin said quietly. "Set course for the signal source." His crew exchanged worried glances but obeyed. The Valari were explorers, not warriors. Their bodies were fragile, their ships built for observation, not combat. But they had sworn an oath to answer distress calls. The oath did not make exceptions for Deathworld systems. 3 days later, they found the source. A crude metal vessel tumbled through an asteroid belt, venting atmosphere from a dozen holes. Its engines were dead. Its hull was scorched. By all logic, everyone aboard should be dead. Then the radio crackled to life. "This is Commander Elena Vasquez of the ISS Meridian. We have 17 survivors. Our life support is failing. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help." The voice was calm. To calm Thelvin had heard dying species scream and beg. This voice sounded like someone requesting a minor repair. "Prepare the rescue bay," Thelvin ordered. "Full environmental protocols. We do not know what we are dealing with." The rescue operation took 4 hours. Thelvin's crew wore their heaviest environmental suits, rated for toxic atmospheres and crushing gravity. They cut through the alien vessel's hull and found the survivors. Huddled in a cargo bay, Thelvin would never forget what he saw. The aliens were soft. Pink and brown flesh stretched over fragile-looking bones. They had hair on their heads and 2 small eyes that seemed almost blind compared to Valari visual organs. They breathed the toxic oxygen atmosphere like it was nothing. They moved in gravity that would snap a Valari spine, and they were smiling. "Thank God," said the one called Vasquez. She was female, Thelvin learned later. Shorter than some of her companions, but clearly their leader. "We thought we were done for. Our engine blew 6 weeks ago. We've been drifting ever since." 6 weeks. 6 weeks in a dying ship with failing life support. Any Valari crew would have perished in days. These creatures had survived through sheer stubbornness. "Please," Thelvin said through his translator. "Come aboard our vessel. We will provide medical assistance." What happened next shocked him to his core. The aliens walked onto his ship barefoot. They wore thin clothing that offered no protection from radiation. They complained only that the temperature was a bit cold. One of them, a large male with dark skin, actually laughed when he saw the Valari crew in their environmental suits. "You guys look like you're ready for a hazmat situation," he said. "Relax. We don't bite." Thelvin did not know what hazmat meant. He did not know what bite implied, but he understood that these creatures had no idea how terrifying they were. In the medical bay, his doctors ran scans on the aliens. The results were impossible. Their bones were dense as stone. Their muscles could generate forces that would tear Valari limbs apart. Their immune systems contained billions of microscopic warriors that destroyed invading organisms. Their brains produced chemicals that blocked pain and fear during crisis situations. They were perfect survival machines, and they had evolved naturally on a world that should have killed them. "What is your homeworld called?" Thelvin asked Commander Vasquez. "Third, rock from the sun. It's not much, but it's home." Thelvin pulled up the scans of Earth. Gravity at 1.0 standard, nearly double what most species could tolerate. An atmosphere saturated with corrosive oxygen. Extreme temperature fluctuations ranging from frozen poles to boiling equatorial regions. A magnetosphere barely strong enough to shield the surface from stellar radiation. Liquid water covering 70% of the surface. Violent weather systems, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, apex predators on every continent. "Your world," he said slowly, "is one of the most dangerous planets in the known galaxy." Vasquez shrugged. "It has its rough spots. But we manage. We manage." Two words that contain the entire horror of human existence. They did not merely survive their death world. They thrived on it. They built cities and civilizations while their planet tried to kill them. Thelvin retreated to his quarters and composed a message to the Galactic Council. His hands trembled as he wrote. "Honored Council members, I must report a discovery of unprecedented significance. We have made contact with a sapient species from a Class 12 death world. They call themselves humans. They call their planet Earth. They are cooperative and show no immediate hostility. But I must warn you, what I have witnessed defies all understanding. These beings walk through environments that would kill us in minutes. They breathe poison. They laugh at gravity. They treat mortal danger as minor inconvenience. I do not believe they understand what they are. I do not believe they know how the galaxy will react to their existence. I request immediate guidance. The humans wish to return home. They wish to warn their people that they are not alone in the universe. I do not know if this is wise. I do not know if anything about this situation is wise. I know only that the galaxy has changed forever. Please advise." He sent the message and waited. Outside his window, the human survivors gathered in the observation deck. They stared at the stars with wonder in their eyes, pointing at nebulas and distant galaxies. Like children seeing the ocean for the first time, they had no idea that half the galaxy would want them dead. They had no idea that their very existence threatened everything. The Galactic Union believed about survival and civilization. They were Deathworlders. And they had just announced themselves to a universe that was not ready for them. The Galactic Council chamber had stood for 40,000 cycles. It had witnessed the rise and fall of empires. It had hosted peace treaties that ended wars spanning centuries. Its walls had absorbed the voices of countless species debating the fate of the galaxy. But it had never been silent like this. 12 elder species sat in their designated seats, arranged in a great circle around the central platform. The Moldari floated in their zero-gravity bubbles, their gelatinous bodies rippling with anxiety. The Dasari coiled in their heated pools, their reptilian eyes fixed on the chamber entrance. The Valari stood in their crystalline clusters, light refracting through their bodies in patterns of deep unease, and then the humans walked in. Ambassador Crixton of the Moldari Collective nearly collapsed. He had read Captain Thelvin's report. He had studied the biological scans, but nothing prepared him for the reality of watching Deathworlders move through space meant for civilized beings. They wore no environmental suits. They carried no breathing apparatus. They walked across the floor like the crushing gravity was nothing more than a gentle breeze. The one called Commander Vasquez actually climbed the stairs to the central platform, her legs pumping against forces that would snap Moldari tentacles like twigs.
"Thank you for receiving us," she said.
Her voice was calm, respectful, completely unaware of the terror she inspired. "On behalf of the people of Earth, I extend our gratitude for the rescue of our crew." High Arbiter Solemnus of the Enlightened Chorus leaned forward. He was ancient, even by galactic standards, his luminous form flickering with barely contained power. He had guided the Council through 3 major crises. He had never faced anything like this. "Commander Vasquez," he said carefully, "we have reviewed the data from your rescue. We have questions about your species and your homeworld, of course, Vasquez said. We're happy to share whatever you want to know. The questions began slowly, then built in intensity. Each answer made the council members more afraid. Your planet experiences extreme temperature variations? Sure. Our poles get down to -60, maybe 70 degrees. Our equatorial regions can hit 50 degrees on a bad day. We've learned to adapt. Your atmosphere contains free oxygen at toxic concentrations, about 21%. We actually need it to breathe. Without it, we die in minutes. Your world experiences violent geological activity, earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis. The Ring of Fire alone has about 450 active volcanoes. We build cities near them anyway. The soil is very fertile. Your species has survived mass extinction events. Vasquez paused, counting on her fingers. 5 major ones that we know of. The last one killed the dinosaurs about 65 million years ago. We evolved after that. But we've had close calls since then, too. Ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, asteroid near misses. The chamber had grown quieter with each answer. By now, even the bravest council members were pressing back in their seats. Putting as much distance as possible between themselves and the human delegation, Elder Yeneth of the Dasari was the first to break the silence. She was old and wise, her scaled body marked with the scars of a long philosophical journey. Unlike her colleagues, she leaned forward with something like curiosity. "Commander," she said softly, "you speak of these horrors as if they are ordinary. Do you not fear your own world?" Vasquez considered the question seriously. Fear it? No. Respect it. Absolutely. Earth taught us that nothing is guaranteed. Every generation faces new challenges. We lose people to disasters, to diseases, to accidents. But we keep going. We rebuild. We adapt. That's just what humans do. What you describe, said High Arbiter Solemnus, is not adaptation. It is war. Endless war against your own environment, maybe Vasquez admitted. But we don't see it that way. We see it as living. Every sunset is a victory. Every child born is a triumph. We celebrate survival because we know how precious it is. The council debated for 3 days. Half wanted the humans contained, quarantined, perhaps even eliminated before they could spread beyond their solar system. The other half argued for diplomacy, for study, for understanding. In the end, a compromise emerged. A diplomatic envoy would accompany the humans back to Earth, not to make contact with their civilization, but to assess the threat level. To determine whether humanity was a danger to galactic peace, the journey took 2 weeks. The envoy included Scholar Viren of the Dasari, a philosopher who had spent her life studying the nature of survival. She watched the humans during the voyage, taking notes on their behavior. They slept for 8 hours at a time, completely unconscious and vulnerable. Any predator could have killed them in that state. Yet they did it every single night without fear. They ate organic matter that would poison most species. They consumed chemical stimulants called coffee that accelerated their heart rates to dangerous levels. They exercised for recreation, deliberately stressing their bodies to make them stronger. They told stories and laughed at danger. They played games that simulated combat and survival scenarios. They formed emotional bonds so strong that they would die for each other without hesitation. When the ship finally entered Earth's solar system, Scholar Viren pressed her face to the viewport and stared at the blue marble growing larger against the stars. "It is beautiful," she whispered. "It is home," Vasquez said beside her. The descent to the surface nearly killed the diplomatic envoy. Gravity slammed into them like a physical blow. The atmosphere burned their filters. The sunlight, even filtered through clouds, was bright enough to damage Valari crystalline structures, but it was what they saw on the surface that truly broke their understanding of the universe. Cities. Massive cities. Built on fault lines. Coastal zones. Floodplains. Billions of humans living in environments that would be classified as uninhabitable by any galactic standard. They had roads and vehicles and aircraft filling their toxic skies. They had factories and farms and schools and hospitals. They had children. Millions of children running and playing and learning, completely unaware that their very existence was a miracle that defied all probability. Scholar. Viren watched a human child fall from a climbing structure, hit the ground, and immediately get up laughing. The fall would have shattered the sorry bones. The child brushed dirt from her knees and ran back to play. They do not conquer their environment, Viren said into her recorder. They endure it. They endure it while laughing, while creating art, while raising families. I believe we have fundamentally misunderstood what survival means. She paused. Watching a group of humans gather for something called a barbecue, cooking meat over open flames while their children played nearby. These are not monsters, she continued. They are not threats. They are survivors in the truest sense of the word, and I believe the galaxy has much to learn from them. Her report reached the Council the same day another transmission arrived, a distress call from the galaxy's edge. The harvesters had returned, and for the first time in 40,000 cycles, the Union needed warriors. They had just found an entire planet full of them. The harvesters were legends, ancient terrors from the void between galaxies. They came every 10,000 cycles, emerging from dark space like a plague of metal and hunger. They consumed worlds. They processed organic life into fuel. They left nothing behind but silence and ashdot. The last time they came, 3 species vanished from existence. The Orinthi, the beloved of starlight. The children of the first dawn, gone, erased. Their planets turned to barren rocks. Their civilizations forgotten, except in memorial archives. The Galactic Union had no military. For 40,000 cycles, they had maintained peace through diplomacy and cooperation. They had forgotten how to fight. Their response to the harvesters had always been the same: evacuate, sacrifice, survive. Abandon the outer colonies. Let the machines feed. Hope they returned to dormancy before reaching the core worlds. But this time was different. This time, the harvesters had changed their pattern. This time, they were heading for the sorry colony world called Valisira, home to 8 million souls who could not be evacuated in time. The distress call reached Earth 3 days after the diplomatic envoy landed. Commander. Vasquez was eating breakfast when Scholar Viren burst into the room, her scales pale with terror. She played the transmission without speaking. The voice of a Dasari colony administrator, calm despite the horror, describing the swarm descending from the sky. Many ships do they have? Vasquez asked. Thousands, Viren whispered. Perhaps tens of thousands. We cannot count them all. The colony's defenses are useless. The evacuation ships are too slow. Millions will die. Vasquez set down her coffee cup. Her face hardened into something that made Viren step backward in instinctive fear. Not if we get there first, Vasquez said. What happened next would be studied by galactic historians for centuries. Within 72 hours, humanity mobilized for war. Nations that had been rivals for generations set aside their conflicts. Resources flowed across borders without question. Factories that built cars and electronics switched to producing weapons and armor. Scientists who had spent their careers in peaceful research began designing tools of destruction, and the soldiers came. They came from every continent. Men and women who had trained their entire lives for combat. Special forces operators who had fought in jungles and deserts and mountains. Fighter pilots who had dueled in the skies above 100 battlefields. Marines and infantry and paratroopers, all of them volunteers. All of them ready to die for people they had never met. Scholar Viren watched the mobilization with growing horror. She had never seen anything like it. The Galactic Union had no concept of a professional warrior class. The idea that a species would deliberately train some of its members to kill was incomprehensible. You prepare for violence, she said to Vasquez, now elevated to admiral by emergency consensus. You have specialists in destruction. Vasquez checked the ammunition in her sidearm. We've always known something might come for us. We just didn't know what. Turns out it was giant space robots. Good thing we've been practicing. The human fleet was hastily assembled. Ships designed for exploration and cargo transport were retrofitted with weapons and armor. They were crude by galactic standards, ugly blocks of metal with none of the elegant curves favored by Union designers. But they were built to survive. Built for a species that expected everything to try killing them, the journey to Valasira took 8 days. 8 days of drilling, planning, and preparing for a battle that seemed impossible to win. The Harvesters outnumbered them 50-1. Their technology was millions of years more advanced. By any rational calculation, human fleet was flying to its death. But humans had never been rational about survival. They arrived to find the colony in ruins. Harvester drones swarmed the surface like metal locusts, processing everything organic into fuel. The sky was black with enemy ships. The ground was littered with the bodies of the Sari who had tried to flee, and in the refugee camps. 8 million survivors huddled in terror. Waiting for death, Admiral Vasquez opened a channel to the fleet. Her voice was steady, calm, almost gentle. Listen up. Down there are 8 million people who have never hurt anyone. They're farmers and teachers and children. The machines want to turn them into battery acid. We're not going to let that happen. We are humans. We come from a world that has tried to kill us every day for 200,000 years. We are still here. Those robots have no idea what they're dealing with. Let's teach them. The battle began with fire. Human ships dove into the swarm, guns blazing, drawing enemy attention away from the evacuation zones. They were outmatched in every way that mattered, their weapons barely scratching Harvester armor, their shields failing under concentrated fire. Ships exploded. Crews died. But for every human vessel destroyed, 2 more took its place, fighting with a fury that the machines could not comprehend. And then the ground troops landed. 10,000 human soldiers descended on Valasira in drop pods and shuttles. They hit the ground running, firing at everything that moved. The gravity was weaker than Earth, making them faster, stronger, more dangerous. The atmosphere was thin, but their suits compensated. The Harvester drones were terrifying, but humans had grown up with horror movies and survival games. They knew how to fight monsters. The battle lasted 3 days. 3 days of constant combat. 3 days of humans holding positions until their ammunition ran out, then fighting with knives and fists and improvised weapons. 3 days of soldiers carrying wounded comrades through enemy fire, refusing to leave anyone behind. 3 days of sacrifice and courage that the galaxy had never witnessed. Scholar Viren fought alongside them. She was not a warrior, had never held a weapon in her life. But she picked up a fallen human's rifle and did her best. When a Harvester drone cornered a group of Asari children, she stood in its path and fired until the magazine was empty. A human sergeant tackled the drone from behind, jamming a grenade into its processing core. The explosion killed him instantly. But the children survived. On the 4th day, the Harvesters retreated. They did not flee in panic. They were machines. They felt nothing. But their calculations had changed. The cost of engagement now exceeded the caloric gain. The humans were too expensive to harvest, too dangerous, too stubborn. The swarm pulled back into orbit, then into deep space, leaving behind a devastated colony and a galaxy that would never be the same. Admiral Vasquez stood in the ruins of the colony's main city, surrounded by the bodies of enemies and friends. Her uniform was torn, her face covered in ash and blood. She had not slept in 70 hours. She had watched hundreds of her soldiers die, but 8 million the Sari were still alive. Scholar Viren limped toward her, one arm hanging useless at her side. She had never understood humans. She still did not fully understand them, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. "You saved us," she said. "You died for us. Why?" Vasquez looked at the refugees being loaded onto evacuation ships. Children crying for parents. Parents searching for children. An entire civilization, traumatized but surviving. "Because someone had to," she said simply. "And we could." She turned to face the stars, where the Harvester swarm was regrouping for its next move. They're not done, she said quietly. They're coming for Earth now. We hurt them. We scared them. And now they want to make sure nothing like us ever exists again. Viren felt ice crawl through her veins. The Council will not help. They will vote for isolation. They will abandon you. Maybe, Vasquez said. But we've been fighting alone for a long time. We'll manage. She smiled. And in that smile, Viren saw something that terrified her more than any harvester swarm. Hope, defiant. Stubborn, impossible hope. Besides, Vasquez added, I have a feeling we won't be as alone as the Council thinks. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in chaos. For the first time in recorded history, the elder species screamed at each other across the Great Circle, their voices overlapping in a storm of fear and accusation. They have doomed us all, High Arbiter Solemnus thundered. The harvesters have never changed their pattern, never pursued a target. Now they abandon the outer systems and converge on a single world. The humans have made themselves a beacon, and they will burn for it. They saved 8 million Dasari lives, Elder Yeneth countered, her scales flushed with anger. My people would be fuel and harvester engines, if not for their sacrifice. You speak of doom? They gave us survival. Survival that costs nothing is not survival, Solemnus replied coldly. It is luck. The humans have exhausted whatever luck the galaxy granted them. Now they face extinction, and we must decide whether to perish alongside them. The vote was held within the hour. By a margin of 7-5, the Galactic Council voted to seal the borders. No Union resources would be committed to Earth's defense. No ships, no technology, no supplies. The Deathworlders would face the Harvesters alone. The decision was announced across 1,000 worlds. On most of them, it was received with relief. The Harvesters were ancient terrors beyond any hope of resistance. Better to sacrifice one primitive species than risk the entire Union. But on some worlds, the reaction was different. The Dasari were the first to break from the Council. Elder Yeneth stood before the Galactic Assembly and announced that her species would honor its debt. 600 Dasari science vessels, normally used for deep space research, would depart for Earth within the week. They carried no weapons. They had no military training. But they carried knowledge, and knowledge was the greatest weapon of all. The Valari followed. Captain Thelvon, now celebrated as the discoverer of humanity, led a fleet of sensor ships toward the Sol system. His crews were terrified. Many had never experienced gravity above 0.3 standard. But they had answered a human distress call once. They would do it again. The Moldari surprised everyone. A faction of zero-gravity engineers led by a young radical named Crixfell defected from the collective and offered their services to the human coalition. They could not fight. They could barely survive in environments where humans thrived. But they could build. They could design. They could solve problems that organic minds struggled to comprehend. And then, possibly, even members of the enlightened chorus began to defect. Young luminous beings who had watched the Battle of Valisira and seen something that changed them. Not violence, but purpose. Not destruction, but protection. Humans had fought and died for strangers. Some of the chorus wanted to understand why. Within 3 weeks, a coalition had formed. Dozens of species, thousands of ships, millions of individuals who had chosen to stand with the Deathworlders against the coming storm. On Earth, humanity prepared for the end of the world. The planet had faced apocalyptic threats before. Ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions. But always, these had been natural disasters, mindless forces of destruction. This was different. This was an intelligent enemy, coming specifically to wipe them out. Admiral Vasquez coordinated the defense from a command center buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The facility had been built during the Cold War, designed to survive nuclear attacks. Now it served as the nerve center for humanity's last stand. The strategy was desperate but brilliant. Human engineers, working alongside Moldari designers and the Sari scientists, had developed a new class of warship. The vessels were ugly, brutal things. Built for the crushing gravity and corrosive atmosphere of Earth, they could operate in conditions that would tear Union ships apart. More importantly, they could lure Harvester forces into environments the machines had never encountered. The Harvesters had been processing organic civilizations for millions of years, Vasquez explained to her coalition commanders. They've optimized for the kinds of worlds that produce intelligent life. Gentle worlds. Safe worlds. They've never fought in a death world environment. She pulled up a holographic display of Earth. Storm systems swirled across the oceans. Volcanic plumes rose from the Pacific Rim. Lightning strikes numbered in the millions. We're going to show them what a real planet looks like. The preparations took 6 months. 6 months of building, training, and integrating alien technologies with human stubbornness. The coalition forces learned to work alongside creatures they had once feared. Human soldiers trained Asari volunteers in basic combat tactics. Volari sensor operators learned to interpret human battle communications. Moldari engineers taught human technicians to maintain equipment that defied conventional physics. And slowly, something remarkable began to emerge. Not just an alliance, but a community. Humans who had never met an alien species before found themselves sharing meals with crystalline Volari and comparing family photos with reptilian Dasari. Coalition members who had grown up believing Deathworlders were monsters discovered that humans told jokes, fell in love, and worried about their children just like everyone else. When the Harvester swarm finally arrived, it found something unexpected. The machines had calculated this engagement carefully. They knew humanity's population, industrial capacity, and technological level. They knew the primitive species had no chance against a force that had devoured thousands of civilizations. The attack should have been simple, clean, efficient. Instead, the Harvesters encountered resistance that defied their models. Coalition ships met them at the edge of the solar system, fighting a desperate rearguard action that cost hundreds of vessels. But every destroyed ship bought time. Time for refugees to reach shelters. Time for defenses to activate. Time for Earth to prepare its final surprise. The swarm broke through the outer defenses and descended on Earth. Millions of drones entered the atmosphere, expecting easy targets. Instead, they encountered hell. Hurricane-force winds tore at their formations. Lightning strikes disrupted their communications. The thick atmosphere scattered their sensors, turning precision instruments into useless static. And through the chaos, human fighters dove at them from above, firing weapons designed for exactly these conditions. The ground battle was even worse. Human soldiers had prepared fortified positions in the most hostile environments on Earth. Mountain ranges where the air was too thin for normal life. Deserts where temperatures exceeded survival limits. Jungles where dense vegetation created killing fields for ambush tactics. The Harvesters adapted, as they always did. They learned, they improved. But humans adapted faster. Every new machine tactic was countered within hours. Every breakthrough was sealed with blood and fire. Coalition members fought alongside humans in conditions that should have killed them. The Sari volunteers, wearing environmental suits rated for toxic atmospheres, held positions against drone assaults. Volari sensor operators guided human artillery through storms that blocked all conventional scanning. Moldari engineers, floating in armored bubbles, repaired damaged equipment under enemy fire. The battle raged for 3 weeks. Cities burned. Millions died. The planet's surface was scarred by weapons fire and Harvester processing beams, but humanity did not break. In the 3rd week, captured Harvester drone revealed something that changed everything. The machine's processing core contained fragments of the swarm's strategic algorithms. Coalition analysts, working with human codebreakers, pieced together a terrifying truth. The Harvesters were not random destroyers. They were not autonomous machines following ancient programming. They had a central intelligence, a core consciousness that directed the entire swarm, and that consciousness was afraid. "They've never encountered anything like us," Admiral Vasquez said, studying the data. "Their models don't account for a species that gets stronger under pressure. We're chaos in their calculations." And now they're trying to eliminate us before we spread. She looked at the star maps showing harvester movements. The swarm was reorganizing, preparing for a final assault that would overwhelm Earth's defenses through sheer numbers. But that means there's a target, she continued. Somewhere out there, there's a brain we can kill. The coalition commanders exchanged glances. What Vasquez was proposing was insane. A strike mission into the heart of the swarm. A journey into dark space that no ship had ever survived. Scholar Byron stepped forward. Her scales were scarred from the fighting, her body broken in a dozen places. But her eyes were clear. My people owe humans a debt that can never be repaid, she said. I will go. One by one, other coalition members volunteered. Valerie, Moldari, even members of the enlightened chorus. And at the center, human soldiers who had already faced death. So many times that one more mission seemed almost routine. Admiral Vasquez looked at them. These fragile, brave, impossible creatures who had chosen to stand with humanity against the darkness. Then let's end this, she said. The strike team's ship was called the Last Hope. It was a cruel name, but accurate. One vessel carrying 53 souls into the darkness between galaxies, chasing a target that might not exist. Facing odds that made survival impossible, Admiral Vasquez had wanted to lead the mission herself. Her commanders had refused. Earth needed her. The defense needed her. So she stood in the command center and watched the Last Hope disappear into the void. Carrying the best soldiers, scientists, and volunteers the coalition could offer, Scholar Viren was among them. So was Captain Thelvin of the Volari. So was Crixvel, the young Moldari engineer who had sacrificed everything to stand with humanity. 30 human Special Forces operators completed the team, veterans who had survived the worst Earth could throw at them. The journey took 2 weeks. 2 weeks of traveling through space so empty that even starlight faded to nothing. The harvester swarm had left a trail of energy signatures, like breadcrumbs leading deeper into the abyss. The strike team followed, knowing that each passing hour took them further. From any hope of rescue, they encountered the first defenses at the edge of a dying star system. Ancient automated weapons, millions of years old, still functioning with mechanical patience. The Last Hope dodged and weaved, its human pilots pushing the ship beyond its design limits. Moldari engineers worked frantically to repair damage, even as new holes appeared in the hull. 3 crew members died in the first engagement. 7 more fell too trapped scattered throughout the system. By the time they reached the inner planets, the strike team had lost a quarter of its members, but they kept going. The Harvester Corps was not what they expected. They had imagined a vast computer complex, a mechanical brain housed in a fortress of metal and weapons. Instead, they found something almost organic, a sphere of crystallized information, orbiting a star so old that its light had faded to a dull red glow. Within the sphere, patterns moved like thoughts, like memories, like dreams. And within those patterns, they found a message. The Corps' creators had died long ago, so long ago that even their name had been forgotten. They had been the first intelligent species in the galaxy, the original children of the stars. They had built an empire that spanned millions of worlds. They had achieved everything that organic life could achieve, and then they had grown, afraid of what might come after them, afraid that some future species might rise to challenge their legacy, afraid that the universe might forget them, replace them, move on as if they had never existed, so they built the Aspergers. The machines were designed to cull intelligent life before it could grow to powerful, to trim the garden of civilization, preventing any species from reaching the heights that the creators had achieved. For millions of years, the harvesters had done their job perfectly. Civilizations rose and fell in cycles, never quite reaching their potential, never quite becoming a threat, until now. The Corps' message was simple. A question frozen in code for eternity. Will they become like us? Will they consume everything and leave only silence? Admiral Vasquez's voice crackled through the communication system. The strike team had managed to establish a connection with Earth, a thin thread of contact spanning impossible distances.
Oh.
What are you seeing? she asked. Scholar Viron stared at the swirling patterns within the core. She had spent her life studying philosophy, trying to understand the nature of existence. Now she faced the ultimate question posed by beings who had died before her species had learned to walk. Fear, she said softly. They were afraid. So afraid that they tried to strangle the future in its cradle. Can we destroy it? Captain Thelvon ran calculations on his scanner. The core was protected by layers of ancient technology, failsafes within failsafes. A direct attack would be suicide. The energies released would vaporize the strike team before they could even approach. But Krixfell, a Moldari engineer, saw something else. The core was not just a computer. It was a question, waiting for an answer. And questions, unlike machines, could be resolved. We do not need to destroy it, he said. We need to answer it. The process took 12 hours. 12 hours of the strike team working together. Combining human stubbornness with the Sari wisdom, Valari precision, and Moldari creativity, they composed a response, not in code or mathematics, but in memory, in experience. In truth, they showed the core what they had seen. Humans fighting and dying for strangers, coalition members overcoming their fear to stand beside Deathworlders, children playing in the ruins of battle, artists creating beauty in the shadow of extinction, love and hope and defiance in the face of impossible odds. They showed the core what the creators had never understood, that survival was not about preventing change, it was about embracing it, that the future did not have to be a threat, it could be a gift. The core processed the data. For a long moment, nothing happened. The strike team waited, weapons ready, prepared to die fighting. Then the pattern shifted. The question that had haunted the galaxy for millions of years finally received an answer. And the answer was not destruction. It was not silence. It was something the creators had never imagined. Trust the core shut down. Not violently, not dramatically, but peacefully. Like an old man finally closing his eyes after a lifetime of worry, like a question that had finally been answered. Across the galaxy, harvester swarms went silent. Ships that had been converging on Earth stopped in their tracks, their programming terminated, their purpose fulfilled. Drones fell from the skies of 100 worlds, their engines cold, their weapons dead. The war was over. 1 year later, Admiral Elena Vasquez stood in a memorial garden built on the site of the final battle. Around her, delegates from every species in the coalition had gathered to remember the fallen humans. Thasari, Valari, Moldari, even members of the enlightened chorus who had defied their own, people to fight for strangers. The garden was beautiful. Human architects had worked with alien designers to create something that honored all the cultures represented. Crystalline sculptures reflected light in Valari patterns. Heated pools allowed the Sari visitors to rest in comfort. Zero-gravity bubbles let Moldari float among the flowers, and everywhere, children played. Human children chased the Sari hatchlings through garden paths. Valari younglings compared their crystalline structures with human jewelry. The laughter echoed across the memorial, sound that the creators of the harvesters had never imagined. High Arbiter Solemnus approached the Admiral. He had aged since the war, his luminous form dimmer than before. The Council's decision to abandon Earth had haunted him. He had been wrong, and he knew it. I feared what you were, he said quietly. I thought Deathworlders could only bring destruction. Vasquez looked at the children. At the Coalition members who had become family, at the stars that humanity would soon explore, alongside their new friends. So did we sometimes, she admitted. We have a history of violence, of war, of hurting each other and ourselves. But that was never all we were. We just needed something worth fighting for. She gestured at the memorial, at the names carved in stone, at the flowers planted by grateful species. Now we have it. Scholar Viron joined them, her scales bright with the colors of joy. She had recovered from her injuries, though scars remained. She considered them badges of honor. My people have a saying, she said. The deepest roots grow in the hardest soil. She looked at the humans around her. These impossible creatures who had survived a death world and then saved a galaxy. I think I finally understand what it means. The ceremony concluded at sunset. Representatives from 50 species stood together as the star sank below the horizon, painting the sky in colors that defied description. Somewhere in the crowd, a human soldier shared a drink with a Dasari philosopher. A Valari captain taught a human child how to refract light through crystal. A Moldari engineer floated beside a human veteran, both of them silent. Both of them remembering friends who had not survived, in her final report to the archives. Scholar Viren wrote words that would be studied for centuries. The humans have a saying, "What does not kill you makes you stronger." I now understand this is not a boast. It is a promise. And for the first time in galactic history, it is a promise made to all of us. The age of fear is over. The age of isolation is over. We face the future together as one people, bound not by species or origin, but by choice. We choose to survive. We choose to hope. We choose each other. She paused, watching the last light fade from the sky. Perhaps that was the answer the creators needed all along. Perhaps that was what they were too afraid to discover for themselves. The universe is vast and dangerous, but we are not alone. And together, there is nothing we cannot survive. The stars emerged, one by one, filling the darkness with light. Admiral Vasquez looked up at them and smiled. Somewhere out there, new worlds waited. New challenges. New chances to prove that the impossible was just another word for not yet. The galaxy had changed forever. And humanity, the Deathworlders who had turned the universe upside down, would lead the way into tomorrow.